On September 11, 2001, America experienced one of the worst tragedies in history. 19 terrorists hijacked 4 American airplanes. 2 crashed into the Twin Towers, 1 was flown into the Pentagon, and the last landed in a field in Somerset County, Pennsylvania. This sent a shock throughout the nation and costed 2,977 American lives. The hijackers originated from the terrorist group Al-Qaeda, following a leader named Osama bin Laden and an extreme Muslim ideology. 9/11 will forever be remembered as the most successful terrorist attack in modern American history. 9/11 was a devastating day for the United States of America.
It was such a tumultuous time. At the time, I was teaching 9th grade in a Philadelphia suburban school. Somebody had turned on one of the news stations and they showed the crash. They showed the airplane going into the tower. And it was so new and nobody knew what was going on.
News stations across the country interrupted regularly scheduled programming to broadcast footage of the attack on television.
And the news comes in and you can see live as the second tower is hit.
The Fire Department of New York, the New York Police Department, the Port Authority Police Department, and the Mayor's Office of Emergency Management all rallied to aid workers in the Twin Towers.
And then, what was so upsetting, I mean, even today, after all these years, I remember seeing things coming out of the tower. And the TV screen zoomed in, and all of a sudden, we saw it was people. People were jumping out of the tower. Things like this are just so unanswerable. It was so traumatic.
Along with the planes that hit the Twin Towers, 2 more hijacked aircrafts are often overlooked when discussing the 9/11 attacks. United Airlines Flight 77 struck the Pentagon, and 189 people died in this crash alone. United Airlines Flight 93 was overtaken from hijackers by passengers wielding a fire extinguisher. The flight landed in a field in Pennsylvania. The targeted destination remains unknown, yet was speculated to be the White House. A total of 44 passengers sacrificed their lives.
It's almost like I can't believe that students today don't have any memory of it whatsoever because they weren't born or they were very young, because to people who experienced it, it was just so surreal and such a tragedy.
One of the most immediate changes after 9/11 was the sense of patriotism and unity around the country. For instance, the #1 Stunnas Motorsport Club posted pictures of themselves doing what they called the Stunna Salute all across the country.
You know, that's the first day you hear the word terrorism. You hear the name Osama bin Laden, and you start to really question, how safe am I, right? We're in a post-Cold War world, and so everything's supposed to be okay, but in so many ways we find that we are more vulnerable than we ever have been.
Those who lost loved ones held on to any hope that they had. Survivors played heart-wrenching voicemails left to them by their loved ones in their final moments of life. The country at whole was devastated. Citizens stayed in their house, afraid of another attack. International and domestic travel grinded to a halt. Families waited to be reunited. There was no protocol for an attack of this size.
For the most part, we were just completely blindsided by it. And so it led us to completely reevaluate our national security interests. And
Through the sorrow, the people of America wanted action from the government. The Pentagon authorized the use of enhanced interrogation techniques to gain any information about this attack. The first director of the Office of Homeland Security was appointed 11 days after 9/11. The first major action that came from Homeland Security was the creation of the Transportation Security Administration, otherwise known as the TSA.
When I was growing up, if we went to either take someone to the airport or collect someone from the airport, we were able to go. There was no security, there was no TSA. We just, went right to the gate. But now that's just not what happens.
you don't have to do more than go to an airport to see, and have been to an airport before 9/11, to go to an airport after 9/11, to understand just the broad impact that event had on American society and the broader American psyche.
Nationalism rose through an all-time high. Because of patriotism and the lack of responsibility immediately following the attack, the people needed somebody to blame. Islamophobia spread like wildfire throughout the country. Innocent civilians were blamed for this horrific attack. Although 9/11 was 22 years ago, the American people are still wary of foreigners today.
What does national security look like in the 21st century, in this new age of where we're not, fighting nations, you're fighting somebody in a briefcase in Times Square.
The problem is that the man with the briefcase has to come from somewhere. The American government began to formulate plans to retaliate against the Middle Eastern countries that hosted Al-Qaeda. Eventually, the War on Terror began. Countries such as Iraq and Iran became war zones. As we moved troops into the Middle East, a parallel battle for domestic control ensued.
Using Cuba, our naval base in Cuba, as a detention center rose up in kind of like a Patriot Act style manner in terms of our readjustment to our national security strategies in combating global terrorism and the broader war on terror.
The atrocities committed at Guantanamo Bay would later be a hot topic for human rights activists across the globe.
Just the labeling of these individuals as unlawful enemy combatants, gave them pretty broad latitudes to abuse the, you would say, speaking from an American perspective, constitutional rights, but if we're talking about, say, the Geneva Accords, just broader human rights. It's left really kind of an indelible black mark in our, foreign policy abroad.
But finally, justice was served to the perpetrators of 9/11.
Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda.